Hello, and this is XCOM, and with me is Rechenmaschine, uh, one of the new guys around the block. He's actually uh, he's been seen or been spotted by many of the tech people, but he's never actually been part of any specific server. But he actually pulled a Pele. He just contacted me one day and goes like, "Yo, XCOM, you look at this," and then he shows me the coolest 360 cannon. Absolutely astonishing. That was completely jaw-dropping. And then he said, we need to work on a project together. So he said, I have an idea about the 360 cannon that we can actually to make it more powerful and such. And I said, we were actually thinking about doing the same thing for the couple of weeks, and then we both started. So Reg had a bunch of ideas, we had a bunch of ideas, and we just combined them, and then we made something really cool. And that's what you saw at the beginning of the video. What was the thought process behind the 360 cannon?
I want to remove piston bolts.
You want to remove piston bolts? Exactly, there we have it.
And so much work every time you have to build this.
There we have it, folks.
And it's much easier to travel with this fast speed.
We were in this world. This is actually the creative world that I've been using for different stuff. And here is the old Christmas cannon, the first iteration, the one that it actually built on survival that blew up. And has also been blown up half the way here in creative. And in the background, you can actually see a bunch of tech that that went into the video that you just saw. But we started off somewhere around here, and this is where you showed me, Rich, the design that you were planning to set up for the cannon, how to align the TNT and stuff.
And this is outdated. This was a diagonal TNT viewport, but this don't works because
yeah, TNT motion. The idea was to take the TNT and then put the TNT into the corners here, so that there is a TNT corner in the corner, and then you can have different amount of TNT in different corners, and then when the pearl is in the middle, it's shot from below here, and then have the TNT blast the pearl in different angles. It was a really cool idea, and originally we had thought of different ways. Like I think we had theorized about aligning the TNT just before Rich showed up. We were talking about it amongst us, amongst other people in the tech community, about aligning the TNT using fences and slime and whatnot. But the idea from Rich was just perfect, because I think in his video, you can even see it in his 360 video, he used something very similar. So we went into this world, and the first thing we actually started to develop was the compressors. And you can see that this is part of the compressor from the compressor video. This is the 2x66 duper, but then we realized that this is not a really good TNT setup, because we needed a modular setup, and then you could activate a specific amount of TNT, an arbitrary number of these dupers, given that setup over there isn't really modular. So we looked at this one over here with the 11 duper, and then we went for took the two of the 11 dupers, attached them together, and made a really compact 22 duper. So this is probably the most compact 22 duper by now, and it's very simplistic, that you can actually tile them, and then you can that's what you can actually see here. And we developed this new compactor based on the needs that we had. So we needed to get different amount of TNT batches, and by activating different amount of TNT batches, we could get different number of TNT, and that was kind of a necessity. But that's details. We'll get back to that a little bit later. And then we went back to the aligning of the TNT, and I was talking to Rich, and he had many ideas. While I focused on the TNT compressors, Rich focused on the TNT aligners, because we needed to not just have the TNT compressors, we also needed to align the TNT to get the four-way system that Rich actually had in his video. So, Rich, what was the thought processes behind all the stuff that we are seeing around here?
We compact, basically my aligners for my video.
Yeah.
This new setup with the end rods.
Ah, yeah, the new setup from your video, it was you had fences, if I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the TNT have to fall down about 3 blocks, and this is much faster. It's only have to fall down the double voltage here.
If I understand it, it was somewhere up here. Yeah. And
About
yeah. And the TNT had to fall from up here and all the way down here before it could get aligned.
the number of TNT is really limited by the amount of time you have.
Yeah,
The time, it's some points here to get a high number of TNT.
that's true. It's true. And the TNT compressors here have a completely different alignment system, so needed to be fast. But then you started off somewhere around here, like I think it was the four-way design. That was the first idea, right?
Here in this case, we first time the fences that started directly in the tuber. You have the TNT in this corner, directly aligned. The
Yeah.
perfect position.
Oh yeah, that's exactly that's right. Just because it's a little bit difficult to hear, Rich, I'll just repeat it. The idea was to shoot the TNT directly into the fence and then let it land, and that was the fastest way to align the TNT that was coming from one direction. And then the idea was to make it four-way. If I understand it, you wanted to try to get two-way as well, right?
Because two-way is much less work, we came up with the double extender design.
Because the double extender wasn't exactly functional, if I understand it from the beginning. That was the original problem.
It was complicated to push the TNT in the right corner.
Yeah. The problem was that the TNT were coming here on top of the blocks, and there were blocks here, so that the TNT was aligned against this block, and it was shot against this fence, and it landed straight down here. And to get to this corner over here, you had to not just push it this way, you had to also push it this way. So something had to push the TNT into the corner, like shove it into the corner. And I think you had a really cool idea with these pistons.
On this double piston extender on YouTube, it's really compact, only a bit complicated. It's a 10 game tick input to a array.
Just needed to get a 10 game tick input to make a double piston extender. Really fast double extender that basically compressed the TNT. And the good thing about this double extender is that even if the block is extended, the TNT doesn't get blocked by it. So the amount of time that is actually wasted is this 2 game tick that the fence actually needs to push the last block, so that the TNT can actually be compressed in less than 2 game ticks or so. So then you had an idea about going to the two-way, right?
First, the problem with two-way was that we don't have fences here. We have blocks. Here, the TNT gets aligned through the middle, and then you need a second here, and this makes the time even longer. So waste some time, and then we came up with the idea to align the TNT against the fences. The TNT is right in this corner, and you only have to press it over if it is necessary. This extender.
Just to make it clear, the difference between aligning it against the fence was that the TNT first was aligned inside of the compressors against this block and shot into the chamber, and in the chamber it had to be aligned twice, both in this direction and some in the other direction that sometimes was needed. But then then we had this idea that you could actually prep the TNT in the side of the chambers, and then shoot it into the what is called aligning system, and then you just needed to take care of one angle. I think that's when we actually went back into the redesigning the whole compressor system, which was kind of a big redesign. I guess we could go back over there to the compressors and look at it. Okay, so this is the compressor, and this was the original compressor we actually started off with. It was aligning the TNT against these 2 cobble fences against this one block, and obviously there is 2 batches. One batch just to get the TNT down here. That's the main batch to accelerate the second batch that comes down and gets shot into the compressor. And in this case, it's being shot into the 4-way alignment system here by activating this button here. You can clearly see the TNT is now aligned here, and that's coming from the compressors. And as Rich explained, just by clicking one of these buttons, you can either align the TNT going this way or let's just try a different direction. Yeah, you just saw it. First they were aligned against that block over there. That means that if the pearl is in the middle, they're shooting this way, and now that they're aligned in this direction, it means that the pearl is shooting a different direction. So this is perfect alignment system that Rich came up with. Because of the fence thing that we just explained earlier, we had to redesign at least part of the compressor. So that meant that we had to actually place a fence here and put another gate here, so that we could actually do some magic with the pistons, with the fence gates, because it's part of the complicated process of compressing TNT. And then we went over here to the larger machine, and this was a large time sink. And now we had the different dupers all in a long row, and then we could deactivate or activate any compressor by just removing this one block. That meant that this entire module over here was no longer needed, so that this block controlled the different number of compressors that did use compressing or did send batches of TNT or not. But then the TNT landed here in the lava. That's lava protected the blast from blowing up the machine, and then it was shot towards the compressor. And there is fence gates here for a specific reason that's a little bit complicated. I'll not go into the details. The gist of it is that the TNT doesn't actually accelerate all the way over to the alignment system at the very end. What it does is it shoots into these fence gates, and it helps the TNT accelerate forward. But that's those are trivial details that, if you're interested more in the compressors, I'll make a different video for it. But anyways, we now had an alignment system and a compressor that actually worked, and we were going to design now the main logic circuit for the compressing. So we had actually a working system. We had Rech's 4-way compressor that we just saw earlier, and then we had this idea that we could use a redstone signal to make the double extender work using repeaters. And then you could actually deactivate or activate the different angles that the TNT could be compressed towards by using these double extenders and a block that blocked or unlocked the direction that the pistons could actually compress the TNT. And then you had the TNT compressors just shoot into this alignment system, but we needed to have it variable. A different amount of TNT needed to be compressed just because the system required it. And then that was basically shown earlier. By placing or removing these blocks, different number of compressors could be unlocked. So currently this block is pushed in, and that unlocks this compressor that dupes 22 TNT and compresses 22 TNT into the chamber. And then you could do the same thing if you unlock or open this compressor as well by placing this block in there. That adds another 22 and so on, up to 30 modules in that direction, and then another 30 modules in the other side. That was the two different sided compressors that was used then in combination with the aligner here to make a 360 system that basically shoots the pearl in all different 360 degree angles. And to be able to program these blocks that push in like this, we had a really smart idea that was based on a temporal encoding. Basically means that you send different variable number of signals on the same line by different timing delays. You could basically program the cannon up top. So if I click this button over here, it takes a little bit less time than if I click this button back here. This button over here takes much longer for it to reach the end. So by basically using different buttons on different delays, you could program the cannon up top by using different timing delays. Okay, this particular setup is now busted. But then we started to look into temporal encoding over here a little bit more in depth. I'll go through that. So we managed to make the cannon and everything was ready. So after that, we needed to encode how many TNT we were going to compress into the pearl liner. And something like we thought of doing was a simplified way to encode it temporally That way you don't need to send 100 wires up to the cannon and just turn on each module on its own. Temporal encoding meant that you would use one wire and you would send two signals, and depending how far apart those two signals were, just like we're going to see here. So if we turn the first lever on, then only the first one will be extended here, and then that's basically compressing one TNT. 2 TNT will basically be the second lever, and just as a demonstration, just let's go for the last one, the 8th. That would be 8. We needed some kind of a system to tell a user-friendly system, because levers like this is kind of confusing for a user, because there is 30 TNT on the left side and 30 on the right side. That would be 60 levers, and 60 levers just didn't make sense. And not only does these levers have to encode the cannon, they also need to encode the chunk loading grid. So each cannon goes in different directions as well, and the directions can be based on north, south, east, west. The levers and the chunk loading was too much. We needed a smarter way to get this done. So we fly over to the next area where we actually asked Red for help. Okay, so we had a way to encode the cannon now, and we knew how to encode the direction as well, but the problem was how do you encode the cannon in a user-friendly way? So we looked around, and Palace panel is really good. It can be like a selector panel where you can choose this column and a row, and for example, if you want to go to this location, you can just use the buttons, and then you click, like, let's say this button over here, and then it programs the whole cannon. But to use this panel, it's kind of a raw panel. It's got logic behind it, but it doesn't actually connect any logic. It's not exactly compatible with the programming system of programming the cannon. So we contacted Red, and he's a Redstone expert. Hey, Red.
Hello.
So Red is really good at Redstone, so he's pretty much the expert. We always contact Red when there is any Redstone problem. We asked Red, how do you get a signal to become binary into a temporal encoding? That's pretty much the cannon's system. So we started off with this contraption over here.
It converts a hex into time by you input something like 8 or something, and it will subtract 1 off each comparator until it reaches 0. And depending on how many comparators turn on, determines how long the output repeater stays on.
Oh, that's perfect. It's exactly something that we needed from what we saw before. So that's 1.
That's 3.
3.
And then if we do something like
7.
8, 7, stays on for much longer.
Oh, that's perfect. Oh yeah, you can just feed it with redstone as well. Different redstone strengths. But I mean, this wasn't really useful. You showed us some other system over here as well. There was another one. We needed binary into Temporal, right?
Yes.
You contact me and just showed me this. You just dropped this on my lap. It just goes like, here it's come. So this one, how does this one even work? I don't understand it. Magic.
We've got 2 outputs, and currently it's on 0 delay. And we flick a lever here, or 2. It adds more delay onto the second output, and the more you flick down, the longer it takes.
So it's basically a binary to temporal encoding system. Oh, that's really good. 2 game takes up to 32, so you just add them together.
So max is 62 game ticks.
So this was like a good way to turn binary into a single delay, and that could program the cannon. But this panel over here isn't exactly in binary format, so we needed some more help from Red. And he come up. We had like this idea that each panel button would connect to some kind of a logic like this. For example, this would be on or off, and then the green stuff would belong to the left cannon, the red stuff would belong to the right cannon, and the yellow stuff would be the direction. But this looks kind of bulky, ugly, it's huge. Programming this thing would mean that you have to remove or place one of these redstone blocks here. This wasn't really acceptable, so Red, you came up with a much better system. So I mean, the panel here is kind of clear. It's got columns and it's got rows, and the rows they're coming out at the bottom here. These are the bottom columns that you can select, but the rows they're encoded here on the side. I mean, it's a bit of a mess. Yeah, the lamps indicate the rows, and the bottom here, the redstone blocks are the columns. And converting this into some binary format, so we could actually use it with this binary encoding system. That was something that Red actually showed us, but we didn't know how to do that.
This takes the unary inputs of the columns and rows. So all these rails are the columns, and the rows are these inputs here, redstone.
Yeah, those lamps that we just saw before.
Yep. And it turns on these lamps, these rails here, which will have observers underneath them, like here, or above them, which then power the rail above that, which goes all the way to the end, and goes through some vertical busing, and out, and then out to the output. So it turns a unary input, two of them combined, and then it outputs your coordinates and how much TNT is used on the left and right side of the cannon.
Oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what we needed. Guy saves the day. Okay, so then we took the panel, we took the encoding system over here, and just put some wires so that these wires connected to the different row set inputs, and then the bottom part here with the rails connected to these observers, which basically encoded a specific location, so that, for example, this entire row here is one program, and then you can just program it here. It sends the signals into these drawers that then feed into the temporal encoding machine that we just saw earlier, and then from here it could feed into the machine. Quite ingenious, to be honest. Really compact, very compact for what it does. Then you can just click the button and then it should output some signals here. Very smart. And then there is a little bit more to it. There is some spam proof system here. There is some slime wires just to get around the redstone and stuff. And then there is the doors, just because doors are easier to towel signal upwards. And most of it is using rails, so you can actually put rails much more compact than redstone. I mean, pretty ingenious. Thanks a lot for this, Red. A big help from top redstoner. If you guys have any redstone help, just contact Red. Spam his inbox. Of course, we had to also chunk load, but the problem with the chunk loading system was that panel actually needed to send a signal out to up to 75 locations, and obviously that is too many locations to just take out of the panel. So this was the idea that Rich had about programming the different directions that you could actually chunk load. Really smart idea.
We have here a two-way comparator line to encode the panel for the chunk loading grids for the different. We tried to make it instant, but this was it was complicated. Normal comparator system is fast enough.
Yeah. The original idea was to use comparators, and then you could send 2 lines of comparator signals, and that's up to 255 different signals that you can send into these comparators. And by combining the two, you can program any location that you want to, let's say, grab a signal from. Just like in this pattern over here, we can actually grab the signal over here or over here. And then Rich wanted to make it instant, but obviously instant comparators, they're a little bit finicky and they didn't work out. Let's just switch over to the Canon world and we can actually go a little bit in depth into those details that we just talked about.